And I saw a beast, a kingdom, rise out of the nations, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. And upon his head the name of blasphemy. Now we picked up that little word blasphemy when we studied Daniel chapter 7. Which component of Daniel chapter 7 was the blasphemous component? It was the little horn power. The little horn power. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. Now, these creatures all sound very familiar, don't they? So let's have a look at an artist's rendition of this beast. He has the head of a lion. There are 10 horns on his head, and on the horns there are crowns. Then he has the body of a leopard, and he has the feet of a bear. Now, the only place we find all of these creatures is in Daniel chapter 7, because there the powers are described as the lion with eagle wings representing Babylon, and then there was the bear. We have the bear component here, which represented the Medes and the Persians. Remember, it was raised up on one side. And then we have the body of a leopard. That was the 4-winged leopard that represented Greece, that was divided after Alexander's time into 4 separate entities. And then it had the 10 horns, which represented the power that came out of Rome, so it's the divided Roman Empire. So all of these components are present in this creature. So you have Babylon, you have Medo-Persia, you have Greece, and you have Rome. And there are crowns on the horns, so this is a stage where this beast is exercising authority, because there's a crown on the horns. So it's a conglomerate beast. But upon the whole beast, there is blasphemy. Now let's see what the Reformers made of this. Now this is Wesley's comment regarding this beast, and he says it quite bluntly. This beast is the Romish papacy. As it came to a point 600 years since, stands now, and will for some time longer. To this and no other power on earth agrees the whole text. And every part of it in every point, as we may see with the utmost evidence from the propositions following. This beast is a spiritually secular power, opposite to the kingdom of Christ, a power not merely spiritual or ecclesiastical, not merely secular or political, but a mixture of both. The beast has a strict connection with the city of Rome. So this is what the Reformers believed. They saw all the components of Daniel chapter 7, and they find them in this beast. And then there are a number of pointers which tell us that the characteristics of the entire beast are very similar to that of the little horn. In fact, they are identical. One of them we've already had is a blasphemous power. So let's continue. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death. Now, it doesn't say it was wounded to death. It says, as it were, wounded to death. Some translations said one of the heads seemed to have a mortal wound. So there's a difference. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wandered after the beast. And that wandered is with an O and not with an A. They didn't walk after the beast. This is a cognitive function. They wandered after the beast. So they had the same mindset as the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. Now this is quite a profound statement. So they worshipped the dragon, obviously unknowingly, because the dragon gives this power, his power to this beast, and it's a counterfeit system, and the world is beginning to think like this beast, and to follow it in its mindset. And they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? So obviously he's powerful. He's not easy to overcome. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. This reminds us of the little horn power, which did the same. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Now you will remember that the little horn power ruled for 3.5 years. Now in the Hebrew, the year had 360 days and the month had 30 days. So if you multiply 3.5 by 30 to get the number of days, you get to 1,260. And if you take 42 months of 30 days and you multiply that out, you also get to 1,260. So it's the same time period. So it's the same attributes. He's blasphemous. He has the same time period. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. So what is blasphemy? We need to make sure again, as we did when we looked at the little horn. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4, remember the reformers said that Paul, in describing the man of sin, was describing the exact same power that Daniel was describing when he described the little horn power. And we looked at all the parallels. Who opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And the reformers claimed that all the parallel Bible texts show that the temple is the church, because Paul, writing to the Ephesians, said, you are the temple of the living God. So here's this power sitting in Christianity. So it's a Christian power. Now, does the Pope claim to have this divine power? Well, he does. Ferrara's Ecclesiastical Dictionary, the Pope is of so great dignity and so exalted that he is not a mere man, but as it were God and the vicar of God. And Cardinal Bellarmine says, all the names which in scriptures are applied to Christ, by virtue of which it is established that he is over the church, all the same names are applied to the Pope. So he takes all the titles of Christ. Now the word anti also means in the place of. So if someone takes the place of Jesus Christ, he is anti-Christos, anti-Christ. And then he claims infallibility. This is an attribute which belongs to God alone. This is Pope Pius IX, 1846 to 1878, during whose pontificate the doctrine of papal infallibility was dogmatically defined by the First Vatican Council. Now this is quite incredible that they defined it so late, because in practice it had been in vogue and in use throughout their existence. In fact, it came very early on in the first centuries after Christ that they assumed the power of infallibility. So papal infallibility is a dogma of the Catholic Church that states that in virtue of the promise of Jesus to Peter, the Pope is preserved from the possibility of error. When in the exercise of his office, this is official quote from Rome, as a shepherd and teacher of all Christians, in virtue of his supreme apostolic authority, he defines a doctrine concerning faith or morals to be held by the whole church. So he is infallible. He cannot make a mistake. It cannot even happen that in his thinking along these lines, he makes a mistake according to the doctrine. So this is an attribute that belongs to God alone, that he implies to himself. And then Revelation 13 verse 5 says, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. So you have this specific time period, which we've already analyzed. 42 months, the Hebrew month, 30 days, 30 times 42, 1,260 days. And the reformers all said in one accord that the day-year principle has to apply to prophecy. Otherwise, the other prophecies in the Bible don't work out. If you don't apply it to the one, to this one, then you'd have to ignore it for the others as well. Then none of the prophecies work out. But all the prophecies concerning Christ have to use the day year principle to apply. Ezekiel 4 verse 6, I've given you a day for a year. So there is a biblical injunction for doing this. Now if we look at the history, Viglius ascended the papal chair in 538 AD. That's when the Ostrogoths finally were eradicated, one of the three horns that were eradicated, under the military protection of Belisarius. So these are the soldiers and the army of the emperor in the east that enabled him to take the throne because his opposition had been removed. This is just history. So we have a starting date for this prophecy. So the legally recognized supremacy of the Pope began in 538 AD when there went into effect a decree of Emperor Justinian making the Bishop of Rome head over all the churches, the definer of doctrine, and the corrector of heretics. So let's add 1,260 years to 538. Well, then we get to 1798. What happened then? Revelation 13 verse 3 says, and I saw one of his heads as if it were wounded to death. As if it were wounded to death. So here was a wound. Now a beast is a kingdom. It's a political entity. So if it receives a mortal wound, that means the political power must be removed from it. So in 1798, what happened? Berthier, the French general under Napoleon, made his entrance into Rome, abolishing the papal government and establishing a secular one. So here, the political power of Rome came to an end. So the beast received a mortal wound. Unless it was a ruse and it just had to appear as if it had a mortal wound. That's another lecture in itself. For today, it received a mortal wound. And now it gives us some details about what the beast's activities were. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints. So it's a persecuting power. And to overcome them. So he would be victorious in what he was doing. And power was given him over all kindred, tongues, and nations. So prophetically, the prophet sees in vision that this power will eventually have power over the entire world. Now, was Rome a persecuting power? Papal Rome? The answer is yes. The Inquisition is history. Everybody knows about it. With torture chambers and sentencing to death at the stake, live burnings, stranglings, every single means was carried out to persecute the saints. From the time of the early Christians right through until after the mortal wound, the Inquisition in Rome was still alive after 1798. And it was run there by the Jesuits. And they were persecuted for heresy. Now heresy means choice, the Greek heresis, deciding for oneself what one shall believe and practice. Because Rome claimed infallibility. So if they defined a doctrine and you refused to believe it, well then you were a heretic and you were sentenced to death. And I saw one of the heads as it were wounded to death. And then this amazing statement, his deadly wound was healed. In other words, if a beast is a political entity, and he loses his political power, then the beast is dead. What will it take to heal and to be alive again? He must get his political power back. Now, this didn't affect his church power because he was also ecclesiastical power, but the symbol in the Bible for that is a woman and not a beast. A beast is a political entity. So the beast, the political side of this power, received a deadly wound, and the deadly wound was healed. So he lost his power under Berthier, under the Napoleon power. Italy was made a secular state. All the papal states were taken away. It was only a church. And then he would receive it back. And then, only then, would all the world receive the mindset, wonder after the beast. So only after the healing of the wound. Now it's fascinating when you go back into history and you look at the Assyrian kingdoms, the ancient Assyrian kingdoms, they had this very symbolism. So the Bible draws from known symbolism, which Satan had already counterfeited, knowing how God works, because even in the Old Testament we read about Leviathan, the seven-headed monster, and here the god, or the precursor of the god Marduk, is wounding one of the heads of the seven-headed beast. So the symbols that are used in the Bible, like the lion with eagle wings, these were known to the people of the time. So Daniel would have understood what this actually means. So it's fascinating that we can pick up this symbolism in the archaeology. Well, what happened and how did Rome get its power back? Well, it happened in 1929. The Rome question tonight was a thing of the past, and the Vatican was at peace with Italy. In affixing the autographs to the memorable document, Healing the Wound, extreme cordiality was displayed on both sides. So claimed the San Francisco Chronicle. So they even used the word healing the wound. So in 1929, there's the San Francisco Chronicle with the headlines, Mussolini and Gaspari sign historic Roman pact, healing the wound. Here they are seen signing it. The Vatican received its political power back. And the smallest state in the world was born with the Vatican State, an independent sovereign nation with political power was born. So the wound was healed politically. And power was given him over all kindreds, tongues, and nations. That's quite an astounding prophecy. So this church that appeared to be politically done for would rise again and would control the entire world. Now this is where this little word, seem to have a mortal wound, comes in. Because what really happened in history is that when the political power for all intents and purposes was removed to the eye of the beholder, they went underground. And through their secret societies and their manipulations, through the Knights of Malta and through all their organizations, the Franciscans and the Jesuits and all of these, they expanded their power into every nation on earth without anyone knowing how it was done. It was a brilliant move.